presentation is proudly brought to you by the National Center for Wellness.
Hi, welcome to the Childbirth Summit. I'm Dr. Rob Coombs, founder of the National Center for Wellness and host of the Childbirth Summit series. I'm excited to welcome Carol Lourie today. She's a native of the Philadelphia area. She was sidetracked by a life-changing cancer experience after personally witnessing a successful natural medicine cancer protocol. It opened her eyes to the healing arts, which ultimately interrupted her plans to pursue a PhD in psychology. Now located in Berkeley, California, Carol's 30 years of practice and clinical experience in functional medicine at her multidisciplinary naturopathic practice have helped create unique solutions for couples facing fertility challenges. Carol focuses her attention on developing a complementary, natural route to conception, as well as an IVF support protocol for those undergoing reproductive endocrinology. So without further ado, good morning, Carol, and welcome to the Childbirth Summit.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm excited to learn and introduce some conversation about your practice and your approaches to helping families improve their fertility. We talk about what simple steps people can take. What are some recommendations that you have?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that about 3 months before you're thinking about starting the process of becoming pregnant, I think it's very important to clean up your diet and perhaps even do a detoxification protocol. I have a medical food shake that I utilize in my practice, and into that we put probiotics, a fiber complex to add bulking agent to help clean out your intestines, antioxidant. It's made with coconut milk and water and maybe rice milk, and we put blueberries and banana in it so it tastes delicious, and it's a meal replacement. Okay. So people can do this in the morning and cut out the white flour, sugar, dairy, cereal, which really is sort of like eating cardboard with milk on it. The Americanized, advertised diet and nutrition is, I believe, what's causing people to lose their optimal fertility and nutritional status. And I think we all need to be assertive in taking back our nutritional health.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's something that people are becoming more and more aware of. I think, when you talk about that, tell me a little bit about the nutrition and things that when you're recommending these things, you base your practice on the nutrition, you base your practice on a number of different factors. Can you tell me a little bit about when you optimize a family's nutrition, what are the steps that you go through, and what are each of the different aspects in your practice that you tie together in order to help people accomplish a change in not only their routine, their habits, but their lifestyle and their food choices?
Well, I think it starts with what you bring into the house and where you shop. And fortunately, out here, and I think it's becoming more and more common also in the East Coast, there are farmers markets, there are health food stores. Whole Foods is now becoming a pretty local, national facility. And it's much easier now to go organic. And I think that's the beginning of health. Also, I think it's important to buy things that are not in a box more than things that are in a box. Because once something makes it into a box, it loses some of its natural nutritional status. And really focus on eliminating white flour and processed foods from your diet. That is a huge beginning. Don't spend money on sodas. Spend money on natural organic apple juice and dilute it with water so it's not so sweet. That is the beginning of taking back your health. And I've gone into people's homes and helped them clean out their food pantry. And it's amazing the amount of unhealthy food people have had in their homes, thinking that they were doing the right thing by spending all this money to feed themselves and their family. And it's quite an eye-opener for all of us. Yeah. So I think that is the beginning. And then focus on simplifying what you're eating and really be aware of portion size. I'm of the half cup girl, which is and I think it's important for a while to see, because the American diet has become like, there's so much food. You go into these restaurants, they put enough food on a plate for 3 portions for 3 different meals, and people eat all of it. So I think portion size is a really critical component of health, and it's not just about weight loss, it's about health in general.
Now you said you're a half cup girl. Can you explain that?
Yeah, a long time ago, I went to Weight Watchers, and at that time, a half cup was a portion size of dry cereal. Even if it's organic, it was still a half cup. So I was living alone, and I put the half cup of cereal in my cereal bowl, and I said out loud, "You got to be kidding me." Then I poured into the bowl what I was eating on a regular basis.
Right.
And then I measured it, and I realized that was 2¼ cups of cereal I was eating in the morning. And I went, no wonder you're overweight. So I became a half cup girl, which is that for a long time, I never left home without my half cup. And I measured my food. And I did it to become healthy, and I lost weight too. But I mean, I was amazed. You go to a Chinese food place, and there's 3 cups of food on your plate. Who should eat that much?
Right. And
so I think,
the lifestyle we're all taught is to clean your plate. You know, we're taught that from a childhood. Finish your food, eat your dinner, whatever.
I grew up with the children are starving in China syndrome. I think a lot of people in my age group have that because their parents were of the Depression. But I encourage people to leave food on their plate, and the mantra now is, "Are you full?" Not like I have to finish all my food.
Yeah, I caught myself. I was feeding my about a 1-year-old, and we were feeding her some food and introducing new food to her, and she literally had like 2 spoonfuls left, and I almost went to say to her, "Come on, finish it," and I thought to myself, "Don't do that. Don't do that. Let her be done. She's done." So it is. We have to break these patterns that were taught to us. So I think that's really critically important. Processed and refined foods. How difficult do you find people's I want to say addiction to them? How difficult do you find it for people to be able to break those patterns? And what steps, do you have any steps or suggestions for people to start making transitions as opposed to maybe cold turkey, or do you recommend cold turkey? Cold turkey meaning do it now, not the food.
Well, if you have a serious metabolic issue, like serious infertility issues or diabetes, or somebody has celiac disease or serious intestinal issues or migraines. I mean, if somebody in your family is seriously ill, I don't think you have the time or the ability to go be relaxed about it. I think you have to make a dramatic shift, and that's when you go into the pantry and your kitchen refrigerator and you just give everything to homeless shelter or something and start over. But if you just want to optimize your family's nutrition, I think what I recommend people do is as you finish item A, you replace it with the healthy version of that. And I think that's fine except for oils and fats in the family house. I mean, there's real research now about how, for example, unless it's cold pressed or it has to say cold pressed on the label of the canola or the safflower oil. If you're using what they consider vegetable oil and it doesn't say cold pressed, that's actually a saturated fat and will lead to cardiac disease. So foods like that, I think people should throw out right away and start out with olive oil. And the greener the olive oil, the better. And it should be organic, and also organic cold pressed safflower, sunflower, or canola oil. And those oils need to be kept in the refrigerator after they open so they don't become rancid. And also organic butter. I'm an organic butter believer. Unsalted.
How come?
How come?
I agree. I just like to hear people explain it.
Yeah. I think that it's local, it's organic, it hasn't been messed with in nature, and it's part of what is on our planet, and I think it's healthy. Now, I'm not talking about eating a stick a day. I'm talking about a reasonable amount of butter, every week.
Right. If you're going to use it, at least make sure it came from a source that's going to be healthful for your body, not unhealthful.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. I understand a lot of the other components and things we've talked about. Talks about other things that you can do to add to your diet, to help supplement you with your diet. Tell me a little bit about some of the recommendations and what listeners can do to understand the differences between products they may already have in their home, especially supplements and things like that, versus things that you might recommend.
Well, when people come into my practice, I always ask them to bring the bottles of their vitamins and any medical pharmaceuticals they have, because I want to see exactly what it is they're putting in their body. And there was recently an article in the New York Times where they researched a certain product from several different pharmacies, and they found that what the bottle said it was, there was actually very little of the substance in the bottle. And
That's scary.
unfortunately, it is scary. All vitamins are not made equal. And that's why I ask patients to bring in their bottles of their supplements. People are spending hundreds of dollars a month, and it actually may be not for what they need. So we go through the products. There are some companies that I believe are good companies, and by that I mean that the quality of the products they put in the bottle are made to pharmaceutical standards. They're what they call good manufacturing process plants, which means they are investigated every 6 months to make sure the quality of the facility is up to snuff. And if you have serious metabolic illness, I don't think you should be fooling around with substandard, inexpensive vitamins. Vitamins can be and should be expensive because if they're made in an appropriate facility, it costs a lot to make a good vitamin. And in a sense, you are putting something in your body which is going to alter your biochemistry, and you need to take that seriously.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you recommend that butter should be organic because it matters what the cow is being fed and how that whole process happens, then it would make equal sense that the supplements should be under stringent guidelines and protocols to ensure that not only do they contain exactly what they state they contain, but that they're made in a manner that is of the highest grade and quality.
The companies that I use in my practice, and they're all GMP or good manufacturing process certified, they go out of their way to source the individual vitamins that go into the packet. So I and my patients have quality assurance that the actual individual sources of the supplements are of the highest quality.
That's fantastic. Are there questions that people can ask if they go into a health food store or online, if they actually call a company or something, that they're looking for a seal, a label, specific phrasing to know if the vitamin or the supplement is a better quality?
Yes, they want to ask the company if they're GMP, good manufacturing process certified. And that if they say no, then say thank you very much and move on to a different company, because I think there are less than 50 GMP sourced vitamin companies in the U.S.
Okay.
It's not that easy to obtain that certification.
Good. That's exactly what I would like to hear. I'd like to hear that it's tough and it's a lot of hurdles have to be crossed to make sure that you're able to make a product that's going to help influence somebody's health. If it's not made well, it's not going to create health. So
Right.
that's a logical step. So I'm glad to hear that. Tell me a little bit more about. We talk about the foods and we talk about nutrition. What are some foods that people should be avoiding when trying to get pregnant?
So 3 months before you start the process of trying to conceive, as I mentioned, I think it's very important to totally clean up your diet. And that means removing white flour, maybe gluten, all sugar products, dairy products, and be on what is now known more or less a paleo diet. And if you're vegetarian, that needs to be adjusted. But paleo basically means, I think, whether you're vegetarian or not, from the land and very simple food. And so you're eating protein, you're eating vegetables, you're eating fruit, you're eating broth that you make. I have a medical shake that I give my patients. You're taking certain supplements to optimize your nutrition. And you're also, part of that is proper exercise and sleep and stress reduction and joy. I think it's very important to have joy in your life and not just always be about work and cleaning the house and doing the laundry. I mean, we all need something that feeds and nourishes our soul that has nothing to do with anything other than that. And nobody talks about that. I think it's a very important component of all of our lives.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And just in talking to different experts in different arenas, they talk about primary foods, and not all of them are things you eat. It's things that support and sustain your soul. And I think when you talk about joy, that's critical, because just think about how a thought in your mind that's positive and uplifting or happy, it changes your entire vibrational state. You go from being serious to suddenly laughing. Your whole expression changes on the outside, which means everything changes on the inside. I It makes total sense to me. So I think that joy is an absolute critical component to things, necessary to reducing stress and making you healthy.
And I also think there's one other component of that, which is giving back, and that is giving back to the community in which you live, even if it's only for 4 hours once a month or once every other month. I always go volunteer someplace, and I think that that's part of joy and being appreciative and grateful for what we have and helping others. I think it's one of the things that we can all do to make our world a better place.
Absolutely. You talk about gratitude, and I think that expressing gratitude and being grateful and appreciative of the things you have, it makes a huge difference. And to be able to give back to your community, it makes your community a better place. So those are all wonderful answers. Talk a little bit about your practice in terms of the things you're mentioning. You're mentioning not just nutrition, but you're mentioning a number of different factors, all of which are going to influence the body, from not only the mind and the spiritual side. You're talking about the nutrition and the chemical side. You talk about activity, and so you get the physical side. Tell me a little bit about background, because I know we mentioned you have a multidiscipline approach in your practice. What are things that are really critical components to the practice you've built that helps to address specifically fertility issues for people?
I specialize in people who have pretty serious chronic diseases. They've often seen a lot of different practitioners, and they've gotten some relief, maybe not as well as they would like to be. So I do a full spectrum analysis of every component of their health. The nutritional status, I look at their blood work, we look at their sleep, their stress, their joy, any traumas they've had in their health, their mental health, their relationship status. I think all of those components go into your practice. If they've had certain blood work and I think they need more advanced diagnostic work, that's part of a functional medicine assessment that I do in my practice. Functional medicine allows us to do very specific testing, and then with those results, we can then target your nutritional protocol. So I'm not like guessing in the dark. I know that you have this thing out of balance, and then therefore we can give supplement B to address this problem. It really gives better results. And I'm also a classical homeopath, and I use that in my practice. And homeopathy has taken a lot of large strides in the last 10 years, and there are remedies that have not been before, and I think that we're able to treat more serious illness and help more people, and it's a wonderful, non-invasive, gentle method of healing.
Yeah, and I think there's that spectrum of intervention of, there's critical crisis, and then you take a step back, and then there's, trauma and chronic and disease state, and then you take another step back. And so there's different levels of intervention that can be employed to create a tremendous solution. And the less invasive, the healthier it's going to be for the person. So, I agree with you 100% that there have been a lot of tremendous strides that have been taken, and there's a lot more to come. Can you go, it makes sense to me, but can you explain a little bit more about the functional diagnostic testing, in case that's something that people are hearing potentially for the first time or don't know much about, especially the hormones and the tests that you, I would say routinely, but they are important, especially in a fertility issue, but the tests that are important to be able to check and what it is you're looking for?
Well, often people come to me and they have already had an extensive fertility workup by either their OBGYN or a reproductive endocrinologist. And so I don't need to repeat those tests. But as a functional medicine person, I will do maybe an adrenal stress index, or if they're having mental health issues, I can do a brain biochemistry test, which gives me amino acid analysis of what's going on in the person's brain, which might be contributing to inflammatory protocol. I attend to inflammation a lot in my fertility patients because I think inflammatory process is a big contributor to fertility issues for men and women. And there is a lot that we can do, starting with removing inflammatory foods from the diet and then using antioxidants and anti-inflammatory supplements to decrease the inflammatory load in the body.
Perfect. Now, just so that it's spelled out pretty clearly, I'm making the connection in my mind, but I want it to be stated out loud. We started the conversation about foods you should be avoiding and foods that are unhealthy and making better choices. But I want to circle and make that connection for people that the foods that they're eating that are unhealthy and unnatural, and the response in the body of what it creates in that inflammatory state. Can you describe why inflammation is caused by foods that aren't
Sure.
natural, aren't what we're designed to be eating?
If you're smoking, if you're drinking, lots of coffee, eating lots of sugar, drinking lots of soda, eating lots of non-organic meat and bread and no vegetables and little fruit, that is going to increase your toxic load in your system. And maybe you're constipated, you're not eliminating properly. So all of those need to be addressed. In order to decrease inflammation, I recommend there's certain foods that you stop eating, which are in the Solanaceae family, and those unfortunately are tomato products and eggplant, potatoes, sweet potatoes, red and green peppers. Those are some foods that we start avoiding, and then we either stop or decrease the caffeine intake. Smoking has to be stopped immediately if you're trying to conceive. It really affects your fertility and your inflammatory load. And switch over to grass-fed organic meat and add more vegetables and fruit into your diet, and not drink cow's milk. So all of those, becoming pregnant and fertility, you want to just make your body as clean and clear as possible, and you want to optimize your nutrition to optimize your fertility. And this is a basic starting point that I do with all my patients in my practice, both men and women.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. I want to circle back to that, but even in the very beginning, you're talking about food that comes in bags and boxes and things like that. We talk about some of the grains and things and what their response is in the body. So I think it makes perfect sense that they hear you say alcohol and cigarettes. We know those are highly toxic and the effect that has, but on a smaller level, but cause the same reaction in the body, are foods that nutritionally your body's not designed to digest. And that's the list you mentioned, but those foods that come in the boxes and the bags that can sit on a shelf for long periods of time, they're going to cause inflammation the same way. So I'm glad that you were able to touch on that for people and to express that. Talk a little bit more when you mentioned just, I guess, the fertility issues. You'd mentioned some of the tests that the OBGYN might have tested for. What are the tests that they're doing? What is it that they're looking for? And at what point do you decide with a patient that where they've been and what tests they've received, when do you decide you need to change gears and to do different things?
Well, I think a lot of that is age related. If somebody comes into my practice and they're in their early 30s and they've been trying to get pregnant for 6 months and they haven't succeeded, I have more time to help them than if somebody comes into my practice and the woman is 40. I mean, at that point, if she hasn't been investigated and worked up by a reproductive endocrinologist, I will probably refer her immediately. There are many causes for not becoming pregnant. It could be a mechanical issue in which a tube is blocked. I've had women with primary ovarian failure in which they're not releasing eggs, and in that case they end up with an IVF and an egg donor. If there's a man involved, it could be a sperm abnormality, and there are doctors who specialize in helping men with their sperm health. There are supplements that also help with sperm health, but I think that it's important to know that in an integrative practice, it is appropriate to refer to medical doctors for more investigative and aggressive treatment for fertility. And IVF now has been utilized for many years and is having a higher success rate. And I have women in my practice who I do supportive measures with while they're undergoing IVF protocol, and that is a great combination.
Sure. That's great. You'd mentioned the OBGYNs tend to test things that patients will have before they get to your office, though, and that they will, you don't do those tests. You're going to do or the functional diagnostic tests. What are the traditional tests that are sometimes done even before people will see you?
Um, if well, they'll have hormonal workups, luteinizing LH, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone (FSH).
Okay.
Those will be done at certain times. Their estradiol, their estrogen, the estrone, testosterone levels, cortisol levels, blood chemistry counts to see if there's inflammatory process. There's advanced inflammatory blood workup that often women will have, done by the reproductive endocrinologist. I mean, we're getting into advanced biochemistry now, but it's very important to have a thorough workup to be able to diagnose. Your thyroid can be contributing to fertility issues, and a lot of times women have undiagnosed hypo or hyperthyroidism. That needs to be investigated and treated. That's a very critical component of fertility. So those are the things that the reproductive endocrinologist will test for. And then I test for gut health, which the regular reproductive endocrinologist does not test for. So it's a good combination. You get a very thorough inside-out diagnostic workup.
That's fantastic. And with all of this, and you tie them back together again, can you talk a little bit about stress? When a lot of the things you were talking about in terms of evaluating people and a lot of the protocols of trying to create the change, but what do people need to be aware of? What are some things that tend to be overlooked, or we tend to think, you know what, this is part of life. Like I can't avoid it, but in fact we can. Talk a little bit about stress.
Well, stress is big. We live in a really stressful society. People have too much to do and not enough time and too many demands on them. And sometimes people have to go to work every day and they don't like their job, or it's not nourishing to them. And I feel really lucky. I love my work. I go to my wonderful office every day and I get to help people feel better, and that's not one of my issues. But there are people who go to work every day and they hate their job. And it takes them an hour and a half in a horrible commute to get there. Right. So that's the beginning of feeling horrible. How can you feel good if you don't like what you're doing? So sometimes I help people problem solve, and little things that people can change can make a really big difference. And one of them is to stop watching television, because it's a waste of time. And, you know, if you go to work and then you come home, you don't have that much time in order to hang out with your family, in order to take care of yourself. And eliminating 2 hours of television in the evening really frees up a lot of time that you can do to nurture yourself and be productive and try to make yourself feel better from going to a job that you don't particularly like until you can find one that you do. I always believe that little changes can have a big impact on people, and people can feel and do deserve to feel good about themselves and what they're doing in the world.
I think that's remarkable, and you know, I agree completely. As you're talking, I'm listening to all the different ways that I would make those same recommendations. And when you give up TV, not only do you take away a lot of the negativity that tends to be a major component of the television, you know, whether it's a murder case or some horrible drama that's unfolding, or, you know, worse yet, the news, but also the sedentary lifestyle that usually goes along with that of just sitting, and how that affects your body inside and the physiology in there. So I think it's great. So I just want to recap some of the things that if you were to put them in a list of what you think the most important things people can be aware of, or that people would need to change, just to even bullet point them, or to kind of wrap all this up, because we've covered so many wonderful topics and points in people's lives that they can begin to look at and decide, you know, a direction of what things can I change, what can I change now, what's really important to change, and if I've changed those, what's next in the line of things that can be had. And you had mentioned in the beginning, if your back's against a wall, you need to change it quickly. If you've got some time, these are things to be aware of. But how would you create that list for people? And can you take us through it, kind of like a step-by-step?
I think that we all have the ability to upgrade our nutritional status by making healthier choices and also decreasing your portion size. If you get a sandwich at lunch, I don't think people should be eating sandwiches, first of all. But if you do, I mean, nobody needs to eat a whole sandwich. I mean, if you've been sitting at a desk all day, it's like half a sandwich, And I always have carrot, celery sticks, and an apple with me. I never leave home without those items. And I encourage people, and that makes a big difference in your fiber and nutritional status.
Absolutely.
Carrot, celery, and carrot sticks. And
And they're
an
portable.
apple.
They're very portable.
Very portable. It takes 2 seconds. I mean, I understand people are busy in the morning and like have 2 seconds to get out of the house, but really, we all have time to do literally 30 seconds in your pocketbook and you're out of the, or your briefcase and you're out of the door.
Right.
So change your nutritional status, decrease your portion size. Really, sometimes you have to take draconian steps or radical steps to get rid of things in your life that really don't make you feel happy. Whether it's a friend that's sucking your energy or a commute that is driving you crazy or I don't know what. It's like we have to sometimes make hard choices to get on a healthier path towards happiness. And sometimes it's not easy.
Right.
And it's important to seek out support because nobody talks about how important support is to make these changes. And it's much easier when you have support and acknowledgement and encouragement to make these changes than doing it by yourself.
Absolutely. Accountability partners and that support structure helps, especially when you're wavering or teetering back into a bad pattern or habit, to keeping you strong and keeping you motivated and keeping you in the right direction. So that's fantastic. And lastly, you mentioned the multiple disciplines that you have in your practice. We've talked about, I just was looking at it, we talk about nutrition, we talk about the functional medicine and the naturopathy, we talk about the homeopathy. Can you go into some of the Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and can you circle back through also with some of the emotional work that you guys focus on?
Sure. Chinese medicine and acupuncture are really important and do wonderful work with fertility. Chinese medicine has been around for 5,000 years. They have a whole different diagnostic system for how the woman or the man's body could be contributing to infertility issues.
Awesome.
And it's a wonderful diagnostic system through the tongue and the pulse and the digestion and abdominal palpation. And so we do acupuncture. There are herbs which really address if you're damp inside of yourself, it's going to be very hard. If you have too much mucus and dampness, it's going to be very hard to have healthy eggs and get pregnant. If you have too much heat, the yin or the fire is going to burn up the eggs, so it's very difficult to get pregnant. If you're a man and you have stagnation, maybe your sperm will not be healthy. So there are things that we can do for both men and women to create healthy sperm and healthy viable eggs. And Chinese medicine and acupuncture are wonderful for that, including Chinese herbs. What was the other part of the question you wanted to know?
And lastly, the last part was talking about the emotional work that you tend to do.
Yeah, I was interested. I have a degree, a bachelor's in psychology. I did a lot of work with inpatient patients as an undergraduate. I was going to get a PhD in clinical psychology, and then I got sidetracked by my life experience with a friend dealing with cancer. But I think that dealing with trauma is a very critical component of health. And what we can't process emotionally when the trauma or upsetting event happens gets stored into our body and contributes to dis-ease and ill health.
Sure.
And I think that doing the mind-body work and talking about the trauma, maybe addressing it with constitutional homeopathy and acupuncture, and to release that stuck energy can only make everyone healthier and happier.
It makes total sense. When you look at the hormones in your body that regulate the menstrual cycle, that regulate the ability to initiate or interrupt childbirth and labor, those same hormones can be affected by emotional traumas in your life and by stresses, by a lot of the things that cause inflammation and from the foods and just all those different factors of stress. So hearing you touch on all of those and address each of those makes total sense. And I love to hear that as an option or a solution for people, that you're creating something that is based in, it's rooted in science, is based in logic, and it incorporates some of the best practices that we have available to us today. And as something that's constantly evolving, it shows tremendous promise and potential at helping to create solutions for people who for many reasons and for multiple different factors in life are struggling or having a difficult time getting pregnant. So, to me, I love to hear how you're approaching it and the successes that you're having. I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. It's really heartwarming work, and it's my honor to work with all of my patients. It brings everybody a lot of joy and satisfaction.
Discuss a little bit about something that you have available for people to pursue as a thank you for their time and attention in looking at this important matter.
Absolutely. Through my commitment to reproductive health, I have a line of supplements, and I called Reproductive Fertility Nutritionals, which I sell through the internet. That's reproductivefertilitynutritionals.com. And I'm giving away 3 bottles of my pregnancy and postpartum vitamin and multi-mineral packets. And I think I gave to Dr. Coombs the certificates, and he'll arrange with everyone who gets them. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it's my pleasure. They're really easy to take, and you can stick them in your pocketbook or your briefcase, and just go about your day.
Yeah, the specific information, as this is pre-recorded, is in the email that they can. It'll describe that information, but there's a link at the end of the video that they'll be able to follow to go back to the website to find that promotion for them. So that's fantastic. I appreciate your time so much. Any last thoughts? Anything you'd like to leave the listening audience with as a thought going forward?
Believe in yourself. Believe in your dream. Believe in your ability that you deserve to feel healthy and feel better and be happy. And don't give up in finding the right person, the right practitioner, the right doctor, whoever, to help you on that path and fulfill your dream. Don't give up.
That's fantastic, and thankful we live in an age with the internet that people can connect across country, need be, but anywhere in the world. So that's fantastic. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Carol. And on behalf of the Childbirth Summit, I'm Dr. Rob Coombs.